Hey everybody, it's me, John, with Grace, Liberty, and the finished work of Jesus Christ. Listen, I'm about to start this series right now with this video called Challenging Everything That I Believe as a Christian, because that is what I'm going to do. A series of events, which is too long and maybe too complicated and probably boring, to be honest with you, led me to the point of, you know what? I'm going to challenge what I believe. Because I also believe that if we're too afraid to challenge what we believe, then we cannot honestly say that what we believe is the truth. And so, because of this series of events, I'm going to title this Challenging Everything I Believe as a Christian. And so here in episode 1, we're going to start at the very, very beginning. And I'm going to warn you, I'm going to try to make it interesting. But it may get kind of complicated, it may get kind of deep. And really, it's just my brain throwing up, if that makes sense. Right? A zillion thoughts being documented on a video of things that I've studied, thought about, and wrote down, questioned. And we're going to start this one at the very beginning with questioning the very existence of God. And this is not, some way of trying to prove God exists through creation science. This is me questioning whether or not God even exists. And from there, we'll move forward. We'll see where the journey takes us, but it is going to be a journey. And I warn you, I'm going to try to go slow. But this is going to be just a zillion thoughts, spewing out into this video. And I hope that we can grow together. I hope that I grow through this and on the other end come out better. And, maybe my thoughts and opinions will change. Maybe it'll bolster what I already believe. Maybe it'll be a combination of both. But we're going to start today with challenging the very existence of God. Does God exist? You ready? Let's go. All right, and remind you, I've been spending about a week thinking about some of these thoughts. Days, hours. All right, so, does God exist? Well, let's start off with what's called the law of non-contradiction. It's a scientific and probably philosophical law, basically talking about absolute truth. So, it says here that the law of non-contradiction basically means that something is either true or it's not. It can't be both. So if you have a glass of milk in the refrigerator, the glass of milk is either in the refrigerator or it's not in the refrigerator. It can't be both. A parked car can either be parked in the parking lot or not in the parking lot. It can't be both in and not in at the same time. And when we're talking about God, either God exists or he doesn't. There's no in between. There's no, well, God does exist or he doesn't exist. There's no, well, whatever you believe is true, and whatever you believe is true. There has to be an absolute truth. Just like the glass of milk, this law of non-contradiction states that something is either true or it's not. It can't be both. So, now, let's look at change. One of the things that people use as proof that God exists is change. And there is, of course, another scientific and philosophical law dealing with change. And it says that an object cannot cause itself to exist. Let's think that through. An object cannot cause itself to exist. So what that means is you can't create yourself. because you weren't around before you were created, so therefore you could not create yourself. Makes sense. And neither can anything else. The other thing is that we see scientifically and philosophically is that nothing grows or changes on its own. There are both internal and external factors that causes change and growth. Okay, an example, an acorn turning into an oak tree. The acorn cannot cause itself to turn into an oak tree. There are internal forces, things within the acorn, that change and manipulate and cause the acorn to change into the tree. There's outside factors as well: sun, rain, wind, maybe things that allow it to be fertilized and maybe planted in the ground. These help the oak tree to grow and become the acorn to grow into an oak tree. Same thing with people. So not only did you not cause yourself to exist, but your growth or proper growth doesn't depend 100% on you. Yes, there are things that you can do, but there are other things as well. Environmental factors, situational factors. You can do certain things like eat properly, exercise properly, but you cannot determine to what family that you were born in. You cannot, manipulate how those people raise you, and those sort of things. And of course, again, environmental factors. Even the weather where you grow up, can affect those sort of things. Okay, so in other words, nothing changes on its own. So, is this proof that God exists? So then, if the universe changes and grows, like science believes it does, like most people believes it does, then, what's causing causing it to grow? What's helping it grow? Because it can't do it on its own. Is that proof of God? And what's causing the change? What's helping it out? You got me so far? Good. All right. Now this is where it's going to start getting a little bit deep. Okay. So now I started questioning these things. Like, okay, well, if God is the agent of that change, why does God require assistance? People always say, well, he doesn't require assistance. He's God. He does it all by himself. All right. Well, if God does it all by himself, right? What happens if a person doesn't eat properly? What happens if they don't clean properly? What happens if, why do we have parents to help raise children? Why are there schools? Why are there doctors? If God was the agent of this change and God was the one manipulating this change and causing the growth, if there is a God, why does he need assistance? Because by definition, God needs nothing. All right. So does that mean that there is no God? Because there's other things besides God causing growth and causing existence, such as sex, right? Sex causes the existence of a human being. So if there's a God, why does he need sex? Why can't he just poof, make things like he, appear out of nowhere, or create them like he did Adam and Eve? All right, so what do we say? Well, let's think about a few things. God, at least according, the Bible tells us, God allows us free will. Okay. Now, again, we're approaching this from the standpoint of we don't know whether or not the Bible is true. But there is a possibility that if there is a God, he's going to grant us free will. And if he grants us that free will, then, that means he's going to help guide the growth, but maybe not as hands-on. So he's part or one agent of change, but may not be the entire agent of that change. And, something else I thought about when questioning this was if you look at the animal kingdom, plants, animals, the plant kingdom, animal kingdom, there's very few failures and very few mistakes and problems within the animal kingdom. In other words, you don't see animals robbing themselves. You don't see, problems with animal cancer in the forest, in the jungles. You don't see animal drug addicts, right? You don't see, things, a rash of certain diseases. Sometimes you do, but very, very rarely are there actual failures. And by failures, I don't mean like sins. I mean, failures in a process in the animal kingdom. So if that's the case, what's the difference? The difference is, man's got a free will, and God allows man to have that free will. Again, assuming that there is God, because we're approaching this from does God exist standpoint. All right, now, next question. Can a natural process cause something as complex as an animal or human being to come into functional existence? In other words, is a natural agent of change able to produce something complex? Okay, so creation science says absolutely not. You need God. Evolution, and people that believe in things apart from God, say yes, that is possible. So, now, let's think about what's being said. The human eye alone has, thousands and thousands of little factors, little parts, that need to come together in order to have it function properly. And then all of creation and how the environment and the planet functions relying on each other interdependently takes millions and millions of different factors, is something that has no intelligence, no thinking ability, and is actually not even alive, capable of producing and sustaining something that complex. I guess it's possible, but think about how probable it is. It's not very probable. It's not very probable that that an accident and a series of accidents and something without intelligence and physical capability, something that's not alive, could cause something and create something that complex. But it is possible. We can't, Christians will say, no, it's not impossible. Technically, it's possible. Not very probable, borderline impossible, but not very probable. But not impossible. Okay, so now let's talk about the law of efficient causality. Okay, it's a fancy word for cause and effect. At least that's what I got out of this. So everything that exists needs something that had caused it to exist. Therefore, everything in the universe and the universe itself could not have started with nothing. In other words, there wasn't zero, blank, nothing. And then all of a sudden, boom. No, there had to be a particle. There had to be something. Okay, there had to be something that existed. The question is, what was it that existed? Think about it. If there's nothing, then there's nothing that can cause something to exist or to become. So, and here's a good example, okay? Let's pretend that your father or mother, if you're a girl, gives you something of value, let's say a ring, and says, I want you to hold on to this and cherish it and give it to your daughter or your son. You know, and then that happens, and it passes down throughout generations. So, first of all, if no one has that ring to begin with, then that ring can't be passed down. And so the way it is with existence, existence can't be passed down, or it can't be caused if there was no existence to be passed down or caused. Again, this is deep. My mind is exploding with thoughts. And I'm hoping that you understand it. Sometimes it takes a long time for me to understand even my own thoughts. Okay, but this is where we're going with this. Okay, so now, so one, is it possible to have an unending chain of causes and effects? Okay, so the cosmological argument, which is another, or cosmological viewpoint, is another way to look, we can look at this, or call the law of cause and effect. It says that everything has to be caused, and so therefore, therefore every cause has an effect, right? And every effect has a cause. So Christians will tell you, and therefore, if you follow that chain backwards, you have to have a first cause. And for years and years I said that and even believed it. Right? This one took me a little while to wrap my head around. The question is it possible to have an unending chain of causes? Well, Aristotle says that there can't. One of the things that Aristotle and I believe Thomas Aquinas both say in proving the existence of God is exactly that. It's not possible. However, if there has to be a first cause, if there needs to be a first cause, this is me speaking and something I've read and considered, then doesn't it contradict the law of cause and effect, which says everything has to be caused? So if there's something that it was never caused but always was and always will be, like God, or as some people say it, the universe, doesn't that break the law of cause and effect? Isn't that going against the law of effectual causality? So how do we justify that? Christians will just say, well, let's use God. God, doesn't follow natural laws. But then you're using a law to prove God, and then saying God doesn't have to follow that law. See, they're contradicting themselves. All right, so there's a philosopher, Kai Nielsen, and this is what he says. This is a quote. We need not assume there is a first cause. He says that the person believing in infinite cause and effect does not deny the need for a cause to every effect. So in other words, what this guy is saying is, you can have an infinite amount of cause and effect. In other words, this chain of, this caused that to come into existence, and this caused that to come into existence, could have just always been. It could be going on and on and on forever. And maybe the reason that people, Christians and people who believe in God of any type, have a hard time with that is because we cannot grasp, we cannot hold on to, or in our brains understand, like just an infinite process that never started and never ended. So the only way we could rationalize it is to create some being that we call God, you know, and say he started it all. That is a very big possibility, my friends. Yeah, I know people have a hard time with basic math. Never mind, like trying to, understand, an infinite, amount of chain reactions. And so, because maybe most people, or none of us, maybe can, wrap our heads around that and actually like understand it or grasp it, then hey, you know, maybe it's real and maybe it's true because, like Nielsen said, right? Believing in an infinite chain reaction doesn't deny the law of cause and effect. It actually supports the law of cause and effect. There's nothing technically that says there has to be a first cause. Christians and people who believe in God make that and assume that because they can't wrap their heads around the fact that there's this chain going on and on forever. Okay, so now at this point, I'm wrestling and struggling and going, you know what? I'm going to bed and I may wake up an atheist in the morning. This is where my thought process was going. All right, so here's the question: Is the law of first cause the result of not being able to imagine like cause and effect going on forever? Okay. So now I'm thinking it, and I'm reading this guy and I'm reading that guy and I'm thinking it through independently in my own head, and I'm reading and I'm thinking and I'm contemplating and it's blowing my brain up. My gosh, what did I just stumble onto? Maybe there's just this giant process that just has always been and always will be, and just goes on and on and on and on forever. And technically, it's not impossible. It could actually happen. Christians don't want you to hear that because it would destroy everything that they believed. But it's possible. It's absolutely possible. But is it true? Just because something's possible doesn't mean it's true, right? Just because it's possible that there's a God doesn't mean it's true. Just because it's possible for there to be an infinite amount of chain reactions doesn't mean it's true. Now, there are going to be people here watching this video that are going to disagree with me. Most of them will be Christians. And they're going to say it's impossible for there to be an infinite amount of chain reactions. Tell me why. Because I know what your answer is going to be. Because I had the same answer. Because there had to be a first cause. Something had to be at the beginning. Says who? That's you can't. You didn't give me proof. What you did is stated your point in a different way to prove the same point that you used in the beginning. Does that make sense? You can't use your own point to prove your own point. Show me evidence that this process of chain reaction can't go on forever. You can't. Uh-oh. All right. Here's where we're going to go. Here's where we're going to go with this, okay? Now, however, I'm going to deviate just for a second so I can, probably more than a second, probably a lot, actually, so that I can come back and make a point. If there's no creator, if there's no God, and everything is just evolution, mutations, accidents, this non-ending process, that means nothing that's being said now, nothing that you have ever said, nothing that anybody, even the most profound person in the most profound statements ever said, mean anything. no significant event, whether it's, historical in the context of people, or natural events such as earthquakes, floods, none of that means anything. Everything flowing out of your mouth would just be crap. There's no such thing as morality. There's no such thing as right. There's no such thing as wrong. There's no such thing as anything. You know why? Because that means everything is just simply a series of chemical reactions. You put bleach and ammonia together, you get mustard gas. You put other chemicals together, you get explosions. Sometimes you get cakes when you put different things together. Okay? So that means everything that you say and do is simply a chemical reaction. It's mindless, lifeless chemicals causing some explosion to burst out of your mouth or into your brain or out of your arms and legs. So therefore, it's nothing if there's no God. Okay, so now, I said that because, to come here. It's possible, I don't want to say very, but it's possible, my friends, for this chain reaction to go on forever. But I'm going to, use a phrase I used a few minutes ago. It's not very probable, borderline impossible, because of the fact that we're talking about chemical reactions or a mindless process that is, no life or thinking or even ability to create, intelligently anything behind it. Design does imply designer. Okay, this is where I'm going with this. In order for a chain like that to continue on, on its own, with, forever and ever and ever, it would mean that there could be not one failure in that chain. And, I don't mean a failure meaning it deviates from the course, right? That's nothing. That's change. Mutations, and I'm not getting into evolution yet. So you could talk, if you throw evolution into the mix, what you're saying is that's not a failure. That's a change. It's a change of direction. It's a change maybe in the paint on the chain. I'm talking about a failure of a universal scale. In other words, one thing that causes, the universe to fail. A good way to look at it is this. A couple gets married and they either don't have a kid or the kid is stillborn. That's a failure. Not a sin, that they didn't do anything wrong. A failure. In other words, that chain, that genealogy is going to stop right there with them. And that's what I'm talking about. If something in the universe's growth and change, fails, where it cannot produce something else, then everything ceases to exist. Everything in the past would cease to exist, and everything in the future would cease to exist. I know that's kind of, complicated. I don't even know if I explained it in a way that you can understand. But that is the implication. So although it's possible for this chain to go on and on forever by itself, it's highly, highly improbable. There needs to be someone or something making sure it doesn't fail. This means something in control making sure that the chain continues to exist. And, a mindless, lifeless process, can't guarantee that. It's possible, not very probable. It needs something on the outside of it to continue to maintain it, so to speak. Okay, you follow me so far? All right, so this is where we're at right now. It's a lot, I get, but you need to think of it like that. Okay. Have we proved the existence of God? No. However, yeah, I would say, at least in my mind, so far, I would say that it's very highly probable that there is a God. Because, because design implies designer as well. Let's think about that. But Christians will say design implies designer. But what they really mean is design means there has to be a designer, and that's not true. I was walking through the hotel today. I work at a hotel, giant hotel, here in Las Vegas. Walking down the hall, and I'm thinking about the floor. I'm on the 15th floor. I'm thinking about the floor. Is somebody designed and built that floor to hold the enormous amount of weight that it does? Is it possible that that an accident, a series of accidental events, could have caused that floor to become that way? It's possible. Technically, it's possible. But the odds of that happening, border impossible. And then having to maintain just that floor, never mind the whole hotel, just that floor, to make sure it continues, to hold up that weight. To make sure that if there, when problems do arise, that they are fixed and maintained. Requires somebody to do that as well. Is it possible that they could fix themselves? That is a no, because of the law we spoke about earlier. All growth and change require an outside, require something other than itself to help that growth and change. So, a few things I've learned so far. That a lot of the stuff that Christians tell you as definite, absolute arguments for the existence of God are not true. However, so far now, as we contemplate the existence of God, we see that it's, at least so far, more likely than not. And again, this is going to be a long journey. There's a lot to contemplate. This is just a few days worth of stuff, and I got these things flowing through my brain. So hopefully you join me on this, the whole ride. It could be a long time, but let's grow together. Let's learn together, and maybe we'll come to different conclusions than each other. Maybe some of the things that we originally thought will change. But here's the thing, the truth sets you free. That's true whether it comes from the Bible or not. And one thing we want to know is the truth. We don't want to believe a lie. God bless, my friends. Until next time.